Little NBA Finals preview. Wanted to give it to you guys. Basically what I think this series is going to come down to. I know a lot has been made about the first two games that the Warriors and the Toronto Raptors played in the regular season, which is great. I mean, it's great for contrast and comparison. It gives us a little something to kind of get a feel off of. Here are the things, though. Number one, when you look at those first two games, the first game, there was no Draymond Green and there was no Steph Curry, and Kevin Durant played a hell of a basketball game. Not in the first half so much. Obviously, I believe they were down 14, the Warriors were, if I remember correctly, at one point in that game. Ended up coming back, putting the game in overtime. By the way, KD, 51 points and 11 boards in that game. I think it was 37 for Kawhi Leonard. Then, of course, in game two, it was just a complete blowout, right? Literally, because when you do contrast a comparison with these two games, you have to understand something. Is that the first game statistically was actually very close by any stretch of the imagination. Number of rebounds were similar, number of turnovers were similar, points in the paint were similar. It was the second game when the Toronto Raptors physically dominated and imposed their will on the Golden State Warriors. They literally dominated in every facet of that game. I think the Warriors were only 23% from outside. They turned the ball over more times. They were not very good from the free throw line. I think 9 out of 13. They didn't get there very often. The Raptors got there more often, shot 84% from the free throw line. So there was a huge amount of significant differences when it came to the second game, which was obviously far less competitive, even with basically a full roster for the Golden State Warriors during that time frame. When I look at the Toronto Raptors and I look at East versus West, one of the things that I see, number one, is Toronto, by my count, is roughly 23-8 against teams in the Western Conference. So that tells me that Kawhi Leonard not only has that edge still with the Western Conference because he played in the Western Conference and knows what to expect when it comes to some of these teams. But for me, it's the unafraid approach that Kawhi Leonard takes to the game of basketball and the way he plays defense. You have to remember, Giannis shot basically 60% until he faced Kawhi Leonard in these Eastern Conference Finals and only shot 35% from the floor. This game is going to boil down, to me, to the cat and mouse game between head coach Nick Nurse of the Toronto Raptors and head coach Steve Kerr of the Golden State Warriors. And I'll tell you why. Because I think a lot of this is going to have to do with the use of Kawhi Leonard in this basketball game. How much time do I need to play him? How much rest do I need to give him? And when can I count on my role players when the Warriors are rotating their guys in and out and probably always left with at least one of their star scorers on the floor at any given moment? Because as we've seen in these Western Conference Finals, Draymond Green has the capability of dropping a triple-double on you. I think it was game 3, if I remember correctly, where he had 16 points, better than 10 rebounds. I think he had 7 steals, several blocks in that game. So when you look at the capability of the Warriors as a whole, at any given moment, they can have a shooter on there. I know everybody talks about the Splash Brothers. I know everybody talks about Kevin Durant. Draymond Green is going to be one of the key factors in this. And so when I look at the rotation, I look at it and I go, how can Nick Nurse figure out the exact moments when Kawhi Leonard can be in the game and dominate and give the Raptors some sort of a comfortable lead? Because I'm going to tell you what, defensively, we're actually talking about two of the top-tier defenses in all of the NBA. Matter of fact, statistically speaking, according to NBAReference.com, they are ranked 1 and 2 in terms of rating in the entire NBA. This is going to boil down to the cat and mouse game, feeding off of rotations, and then defensively, look, the Raptors were really good about using their 3-2 defense against the Milwaukee Bucks. And really what it did was it forced everybody on the outside. Nobody was allowed to crash the boards. Guys were able to run the floor at a much better pace. So because when you're in a 3-2, you're going to have guys already waiting at the top of the key anyways. So offensively, or defensively, pardon me, if you're able to dominate the boards what that's going to do is create opportunities where guys are already getting up court. And you're going to have the numbers. That's going to be a big part of it as well. The other thing that I see with this is I if I'm the Raptors, I'm doing as little as I can to use a one-on-one defense. I'm not lining up one-on-one against KD. I'm not lining up one-on-one against Steph Curry because I don't want any of these guys to slash. I don't want them to create space. I don't want them to make moves toward the basket and, kickouts to Klay Thompson and some of the role players that they have. I'm minimizing those opportunities as much as possible. I'm sticking in a zone. I'm going to stretch the floor with my zone as much as I can and use the length that a 3-2 and a 2-3 zone provides. That's the way that I'm going to try and play this entire series. And I'm going to mix it up as good as I can. I'm going to show them some different looks. And every now and again, I'm going to go man-to-man. But I'm only going to use man-to-man 20 to 30% of the time. Everything else, I am trying to throw some different zone looks at them. I'm going maybe box 1-3, where I've got guys that are, posted up basically down in the middle, and everybody's taking up the middle of the court, and guys are just rotating all over the place, not allowing the pick and rolls to happen, not allowing guys, again, to slash at the basket. Because the key to the Golden State Warriors is how they play as a unit. The Golden State Warriors have no qualms about either if I'm feeling it, I'm going to put it up, or look for that next open opportunity. Now, the Raptors, I think, are just as good at that. But the problem is, though, is they don't have as many guys that can just score on you relentlessly the way that the Warriors do. Now, I understand that, especially being a Wichita native, Van Vliet and what he's did in those last couple of games in the Eastern Conference Finals was nothing short of phenomenal. Finished with 21 in one game, 14 in another. Very good from three-point range. I think it was 11 out of his last 15 or 16, somewhere in that neighborhood. So I am doing what I can to make sure that when my role players are in there, and there's going to be moments when they're up against the superstars of the Golden State Warriors, that I am doing everything I can defensively to minimize opportunities with those zone looks and create opportunities with fast break points, so that way I can generate some offense and do just enough to either keep myself in the ball game or keep, a little bit of a comfortable lead until Kawhi can come back in, who, by the way, is going to have to play a complete game of basketball. Throughout the entire Eastern Conference, I can really only pinpoint one game, 52 minutes, where I felt like Kawhi actually played a full game of basketball. The rest of the time, we saw like 10 for 26 shooting in one game. We really saw Kawhi Leonard struggle a lot, and the team really did rally around him, but Kawhi did enough to be able to separate himself for the most part in some of those games. But it was never really a complete game from Kawhi. We would see, one quarter he would play great, and another quarter it was just kind of like he would fall off the edge. So if I'm Toronto, the bottom line here is this. I'm using a lot of zone defenses, and I'm trying to keep my guys stretched out all over the floor as much as possible and keep that middle sewed up by not allowing guys to crash in, and use those missed buckets to create as many defensive rebounds and fast break points as possible, so that way I'm not giving Golden State second chance opportunities. I am doing all that I can with my rotation to use it to my advantage against the Golden State Warriors and let my defense keep my offense in the game. The antithesis, obviously, is if I'm Golden State, I'm trying to set up as much half-court offense as I possibly can. And without my superstar, Kevin Durant, I am relying on Steph and Klay to figure out a way to create space, as they're so good at doing, creating their own opportunities. And then I'm looking towards my bench, which is probably the best in the entire NBA, to sustain my team when I want to rest my star players. And so that way I can use them later in the fourth quarter to come up well-rested and with big plays. Guys, I am Drew Duncan, host of the Full Court Press. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan 83. Don't forget, you can always find the Full Court Press on Facebook and Instagram as well. And as always, don't you dare touch that dial.